on Retro Warriors episode 419. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by viable human being, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
I almost said the mean one.
No, it's fine.
The awful mean one.
It's not me.
We do have a bit of housekeeping.
Yeah.
Which is that I have an imminent vacation, like day after tomorrow. I'm getting on a plane going on vacation.
Oh, wow.
And,
Where?
We're going to Port Aransas.
Oh,
so
nice.
We're going to go through all the hassle of going to an airport and going through security and checking bags and doing all that crap to fly for 40 minutes, to then rent a car and drive for 40 minutes, to go hang out in the Gulf of Mexico during one of the worst heat waves Texas has seen in modern times.
That's good.
And I am excited about my family vacation, and if I keep saying it, it will become true.
I had no idea you were going on vacation. That sounds very exciting.
I thought I'd mentioned it to you. Now I feel bad. Yeah, we're gonna be leaving Sunday and coming back Thursday.
Okay.
And you are dealing with imminent unemployment.
True. Yeah.
Your whole company's, well, not your company. Your
no.
site is like tanking right now. So your work has been insane.
It is tanked. It is gone.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're just picking up the pieces and giving them to other people now.
And so and also my wife started her new job this week, so she was out of town for several days. All this to say that we've not been paying a lot of attention to show stuff the last little bit of time. It is just, we've just had life events happening. It's also summer breaks. My kid's home all day, and it's just, life is happening right now. So if these shows feel a little weird or, badly researched or whatever, then we apologize. It's just kind of, it's going to be what it is.
It's probably fine. It's fine, Justin. It's fine.
I do feel like every third episode, we're like, if the show is weird, here's why. And honestly, people are so nice about the show. They're like, yeah, it's fine. We didn't even notice anything was weird, And so, thank you to everyone that's so kind about it. But if you notice any weirdness, that's probably why. Is because we've just, it has just been...
It's been
nuts. It has been nuts. My week.
Yes, sir.
I picked up a Miu Mini Plus.
I saw that. You showed a picture of it, and it almost made me go buy one until I was like moments away from hitting the button. I was like, one, I'm about to be unemployed, and two, I know I will literally never play this. Why am I looking at this?
So here's what pushed me over there. So I have the original Miu Mini. And I have a little clamshell 3D printed case I picked up off Etsy. And what I use the device for is if I'm going out, I stick it in my pocket. It's small enough that even in its case, it can go right in my pocket. And it will handily emulate everything up to and including PlayStation 1.
Okay.
And so it's just kind of my like, hey, we're going out for the day as a family, or I'm going somewhere, or I'm going to the vet to pick up my cat's medicine, so I got to sit there for 20 minutes and wait, and I just want to have a game in my pocket in case it happens, Right. That said, while it is a very comfortable device for its size, it's obviously not as comfortable as a device that more capably fits my hands, right? And I've been playing through Dragon Quest III right now.
Nice.
And what I love about the Mini is it's so small. I actually play it one-handed the majority of the time. So my hands are so big that I just wrap my hand completely around it, and my thumb can reach all of the face buttons, and my index and middle fingers can reach the shoulder buttons just fine for additional emulator functions. And so, like, I use it a lot. Like, I was standing there. I was cooking dog food because I cook my dog's food because he's allergic to everything. And so I'm standing there stirring his pot of food and like grinding in Dragon Quest with my other hand. So all this to say, the Miu Mini is a great device, and it uses there's a third-party operating system for it called Onion OS, which is so good that I'm legitimately angry that Onion OS isn't available on more devices because it is hands down the nicest, easiest to use RetroArch emulator front end.
Nice.
Bar none. It is awesome. And I know that part of its awesomeness is because they only have to make it for the two devices.
Right.
And I'm sure if it exploded out to everything, it would get watered down. But still. Right. Anyway, I digress. So I have a Miu Mini. My daughter has one. We got one for Andrew, and my wife has one. We all have one. They're great devices. I love them.
Yeah.
But I'm going on vacation, and I want to get through a lot of Dragon Quest 3 while I'm on vacation. And now that I'm playing it in my off time. It's coming out of my pocket when I'm in long car rides and stuff. But now I'm also sitting down on the couch to play it, like really putting in some time.
And that's when you recognize how small it is.
It's a little cramped. It's not like uncomfortable, but it's just a little cramped. The screen's a little tiny, and for those moments, it would be nice if it was maybe a little bit bigger.
If only you had a Miu Mini that or
emulation device that was larger.
Yeah, if only you had
maybe a Steam Deck sized emulation.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
Or maybe a way to emulate on my television or my laptop or my phone.
No, that seems impossible. You couldn't do that.
So I was like, I'm calling it a vacation expense. I'm buying a Miu Mini Plus. And what tipped me over the edge was this. The operating system doesn't flash to the device. It lives on your SD card.
Right.
And I learned that if you update to the newest release candidate version of Onion OS, you can then just take your SD card out of your Mini and put it in your Mini Plus, and it just keeps right on trucking. Like, literally, I stick it in the other device, and when I turn it on, it just auto boots straight into Dragon Quest 3 where I left off, and I just keep going, which is amazing for me because I switch devices all the freaking time.
Right. So let me ask this. Why is it called a Miu Mini Plus and not just a Miu?
Well, Miu, I'm to understand, has been a relatively prolific device manufacturer, and I believe they have an older device that was called the Miu.
Okay.
I think. And so then the Miu Mini came out, and then the next one has to be Miu Mini Plus. And my guess is that they kept the Miu Mini name because the Miu Mini is one of the top, most popular devices. Yeah, and people are searching Miu Mini.
Yeah.
And so it's great. I got the new one in. It's fantastic. It's a bigger screen. It's just a bigger device. The shoulder buttons not only benefit from just being physically larger, but they're also slightly redesigned to make them legitimately useful and usable. Like I don't really play PS1 on the Mini because having PS1 games on a 2.8-inch screen is a little rough.
I know. I played through many of them on my PSP.
But also, the shoulder buttons are usable on the Mini, but you don't want to be pushing them a lot. They're a little wonky, right? To the point that one of the popular mods on the Mini is redesigned shoulder buttons that are more pronounced. The ones on the Mini Plus, legitimately, I use them. Like, they're comfortable enough to actually use regularly. They also add Wi-Fi, so now I can load things to the SD card via SFTP or SSH into it. Or they also built in a nice HTML front end, so that if you don't know how SFTP and shit works, you just turn on HTTP transfer and you go to the website it's now broadcasting on your network and just hit upload and drop it in.
Nice.
It's just extremely slick. It seemed, because today I went back to my regular Mini because I was, again, cooking dog food, and I was like, well, I want to keep grinding, but I don't really want to hold my Mini Plus in one hand. I can do it, but it's right there on the drop zone, edge. And I put my SD card over, booted it up, just kept on going. It's nice. It's so good, Saturn. Nice. Now I just want Onion OS on everything, so I can just move my little SD card around to all my devices.
Right.
But the Mini Plus, still pocketable. It's still not a big device. It is slightly smaller than a Game Boy Pocket.
Oh yeah, that is tiny.
It's still very pocketable. It's just big enough where you're like, yeah, I don't really want to cart this around in my pocket all day. It's just a little bulbousy inside of the case that I have it in. But yeah, I bought that for vacation because I imagine between the airport and being at the place and not wanting to go outside because it's like 110 degrees, I will probably have a good amount of downtime to play Dragon Quest 3, and I didn't want to put in several hours on my tiny Miu Mini because it really is better for short bursts.
You know what? You know what else is also just slightly smaller than a Game Boy Pocket?
What?
My phone. And I can
That's
play
nice.
Dragon Quest 3 on it.
Well, I can't come play it on your phone, Saturn, because you're going to be all the way at your house.
Oh,
so I had to buy a Mini Plus. I had no option. I had no other option.
No other option.
I can't drive to your house. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's silly.
Don't be. I got the Atomic Purple color.
Yeah.
And also, the Mini Plus, it's like I got it on Amazon Prime one day, like paying regular MSRP. It's like widely available right now.
Nice.
So I don't know. I know what the original Miu Mini, they ran into part issues. They couldn't source the screen. And so that's why it became kind of hard to find. It was being scalped, and then they were doing it in these kind of supply drops on AliExpress. They seem to have solved that issue for the Plus. Good. The Plus is widely available. The software is awesome. If you're looking for a small emulation device, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's just, man, and also installing Onion OS is super duper simple.
Nice.
Literally, you just get an SD card, copy the files over, and plug it in, and it auto installs. It just unfolds itself. Nice. It's so seamless. I love it. It's fantastic. And I went back to today I was playing Virtual Boy, and Virtual Boy doesn't work very well on either of the Miius because
I would hope not.
Virtual Boy is a 32-bit system,
right? And
it's surprisingly hard to emulate, is what I've learned.
Also, it has an awkward control configuration.
It does, yeah. And so it doesn't run full speed. So I was like, well, I'll play this Virtual Boy game on my Steam Deck because it's a Steam Deck.
Right.
And I was on my Steam Deck and going through Emulation Station, and I was like, like I was annoyed at how clunky Emulation Station feels in comparison to Onion OS. But yeah, it's a fantastic device. I highly recommend it. I think I paid $80 for mine.
Nice.
I think I paid $82 because I got the purple and it was like $2 more. And it comes with a case and a screen protector, and it comes with an SD card, a 64 gig, but it's also one of those weird no brand ones. So I take it out and don't use it because I don't trust it.
It's fair.
Yeah, I'm completely enjoying my Mini Plus. It has been so far a fantastic device, and just having a real good time with it. So yeah, nice. Anyone looking for, I know for a little while there, the RG35XX, the Ambernick device that was kind of the competition, was getting pretty widely recommended just because, it was more available.
Right.
But now it looks like the Mini Plus, I mean, at least in America, you can just get it on Amazon and it'll be there in a day or two. So
nice.
There's no reason not to. Also, I just want more people to experience Onion OS. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. When you get to enjoy one of those like projects on the internet that's so good that you're like, I have to donate money to these people. I'm so excited that I have to give them money. This is great. Anyway, Saturn, what definitely not addictive thing have you been doing the last couple weeks?
Well, I discovered that Final Fantasy XIV is still addictive.
Oh, what? No. I thought they patched that out. Did they not?
There's so many quality of life improvements. I have to say, it is a much better single-player experience than it even was before. So I fully recommend it to anybody who just wants to play through the story because you don't have to ever interact with another human being until you're already level 50, and only for a couple of bosses. And you can be dead through those entire fights and just let the other 7 people take care of it. It's fine. However, I would like to make note that even though there's so many really nice quality of life improvements and they fixed so much of the game, almost any complaints that I could have had with it when I last played it 6.5 years ago, whenever it was, somehow their account management is still stuck in 2003. I don't know how they did this.
They do have some of the worst account management I've ever seen in an MMO, and I've played them all.
So I just want to spell out a couple of the issues with it. One, if you bought the game on both PlayStation and PC, and you have an expansion on one system and not on the other system, you can play on both systems until your character reaches that expansion, and then you can no longer log into that character on the other platform, which is weird.
I've seen other games still do that shit.
Yeah.
Like Destiny 2 does it, where they're like, okay, yeah, you can play your account on both, but you don't own this expansion on Xbox, you own it on PC, so you can't play
dumb.
And it's like, why? The only reason that I can think of why they would do that is literally just because they know you'll fucking buy it twice, because what are you going to fucking do?
Addiction.
Like, yeah.
But the biggest issue I have with it is back when I used to play it, I mostly played it standalone on my PC. I just had the standalone installer. I'd play it on there. But I had bought it through Steam back. Well, actually, it was gifted to me through Steam when I originally got it. And didn't matter. I'd just log into the standalone PC client. I wouldn't have to run it through Steam. I wouldn't have to worry about any of the Steam backend running at the same time, any of that stuff. Didn't matter. I would just play the game. Well, they have updated it in such a way that now if you own it through Steam, you can only play it through Steam. If you try to launch the Windows PC version without Steam running, it will say your account does not support this client. You must launch it through Steam.
How? Oh my! It's the same platform.
Even if you go into your
PC,
if you go into your Steam program files and run the executable that installed through Steam, it will tell you cannot log in because it has to authenticate through Steam first. But then it still makes you authenticate to your account after you have opened it through Steam.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating and annoying, especially since I am, lending my Steam library to my mother so that she can play through the old Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
I can't play while she is playing, which is dumb because it is a PC game. I should just be able to launch the PC version anyway.
Yes.
Also, if you own both the Steam version and the PlayStation version, you cannot pay for a month of service unless you pay through Steam. At least you don't have to buy their dumb bullshit Krista anymore.
Oh my God! Don't. Krista and Play Online are both trigger words for me. So you can't.
God, if you think Play Online is bad, you should have experienced it on the PlayStation 2.
Oh, I did. Oh my God!
So bad.
Holy shit!
Oh, it's so bad. God, just the fucking loading music when it was trying to connect to the server, that still just like makes my eye twitch.
I don't fucking know who, when Final Fantasy XI came out, was like, it would be smart if we wrapped it in this like shitty fake operating system and called it Play Online.
In Japan there were more games that supported Play Online, so you could just list all of them in there.
Yeah, well, in the U.S., there was Final Fantasy XI, and you could play Tetramaster, and that was it.
Yeah, there was the card game. That was the only other one. In Japan, they also had Front Mission Online and something else, I think.
And that makes it still doesn't make fucking sense.
Still dumb.
It's still stupid and was garbage.
Yeah, it was really bad. God, and they still use Play Online if you play Final Fantasy XI.
I know. I logged into it like 3 or 4 years ago.
Why?
Because I played Final Fantasy XI for like a month, and then I was like, oh, nobody plays this anymore, and I'm alone, and it's sad, and nobody will play it because why the fuck would they? And so I just gave up.
Now, that was the thing that I noticed in Final Fantasy XIV is it's still very busy. Like all the starter areas are still very, very busy. And then as soon as you get to the first expansion area takes place in this like much more desolate area. But when it first came out, when I was playing it, that area was packed. Like all the storylines would be like, no one has been allowed in this area in years. And then you would exit the cutscene and there'd be 800 people around you.
I like Final Fantasy XIV is doing very good for itself. Yeah. All the reports are really good. And I wouldn't be shocked at all to learn that it surpassed WoW. Last I heard, WoW numbers are being kind of intentionally padded out. So I don't know that even if it did, we would know for sure because the numbers have been brought into question a few times, but would not shock me at all to learn that it has surpassed it. It just
I did see an interview with Yoshi P. They were asking, it was one of the Final Fantasy 16 interviews, and somebody asked him if they were ever considering a Final Fantasy 14 classic like WoW got.
Yeah.
But bringing back the old 1.0 version of Final Fantasy 14.
You mean the version that was so bad they had to rebuild the whole fucking game?
Yeah, and his response was, no, that would be a disaster.
It was a disaster. I was there. Man.
But yeah. Also, I noticed that the PC version of it still uses Xbox 360 button prompts in 2023. Like they have not... They've not updated that to any modern controller. It still is like, press the back button.
Oh, I was going to say, well, the face buttons are still the same on Xbox controllers, but then I forgot. Yeah, they changed the
start and back button. And also the graphics that they use for it is still very clearly Xbox 360 graphics, which you don't think about when you're just looking at the buttons. It's still the same number or same letters, same color, all that shit. But the graphics style that they used back in the 360 era made them look like little candy drops.
Yeah, they were very cartoony.
Yeah, and now they don't look like that in modern games, so it's just a little weird. But
yeah, I think what we've established is Square Enix can never do anything
completely right.
It's like
they always have to shit it a little bit.
Everything's right except for this one thing. I imagine it's one guy. There's one guy that's like, the secret to our success is doing most things right, but right at the end of a project, fucking one thing up. Like and it's just this one guy who goes around every project. I'm describing the Noid, I think is what's happening. I think the Noid works at Square Enix.
But yeah, I will say that the quality of life improvements in the game, so much better. They cut out a bunch of the bullshit quests during the main storyline. Mm-hmm. They allow you to fly now in the starting areas that used to be ground travel only. So once you've finished the level 50 story quest, you can fly in any of the starting areas, and man, it's so much faster to get around everywhere without having to go through every fucking bullshit area. It's so nice.
Yeah. Let's do the news.
Okay.
First up, not safe for work Skyrim mods are using deep fake AI tech to replicate voices of the game's original voice actors.
Don't do that.
Effectively creating deep fake voice porn.
Yeah.
It's man, what a world we live in.
Yeah, and naturally the voice actors have all come out and said they do not endorse this, they do not want it, they will take whatever action they can to stop it. It's just don't do this. That's shit. Don't do this. It's mean and it's cruel and you shouldn't do it.
A new fan translation is available for the PC version of Dragon Quest X Saturn. You love MMOs, apparently.
I apparently need another addiction.
Man. So
I tried the last fan translation.
Uh-huh.
And it was
I didn't realize there was more than one.
Yeah, there has been. So the way the last one worked, because all of the text is stored server side and streamed to the game.
Oh.
It just had an overlay that would detect which text box you were looking at and pop up some text over it, like a subtitle.
Okay.
And it was a little wonky because sometimes it would get out of step with my button presses.
Yeah.
Because it's also having to read the controller input while the game is reading the controller input. Mm-hmm. And I have been told that this new one actually patches all of the local files and manages to intercept some of the streamed files. I don't know exactly how it works yet because I didn't try it, but I'm curious to see what some of the reviews are for this new fan translation, to see how it is. I still don't know if I want to try it or not, because when I did try Dragon Quest X, it felt a little too Dragon Ball-y.
Yeah.
And not enough Dragon Quest-y.
Because Goku was there the whole time?
Like, everybody looks like aliens from Dragon Ball.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see the complaint here. This all sounds great.
Yeah, I don't know.
If I can play Dragon Quest and the Ginyu Force shows up, then this is a win-win for me.
I don't know what that is, but maybe they're there. They could be. Yeah, I'm curious to see how it turns out. That's my take on it.
Square Enix announces that the Final Fantasy series
over 35 years.
Are they including spin-offs here, or is this just mainline?
I don't know. I think they're just counting the main line, but it could be including spinoffs. I don't know.
Has sold through 180 million units.
Yeah.
Nearing the sales total of GTA 5. 35 years of Final Fantasy games, and they have almost sold as many copies as Grand Theft Auto 5.
36 years.
36 years.
Yeah.
And we talk about this a lot on the show. And in the Discord, especially, of perspective, of recognizing that because I think this is where it gets deceptive. Mm-hmm. Our portion of the market has grown so exponentially in our lifetimes that it feels enormous, and it is. But in comparison to the, in air quotes, mainstream market, it is a minuscule sliver of the gaming landscape.
Yeah, we sometimes think about what we consider to be big titles, but they are nothing compared to your GTA 5s or your Call of Duty or whatever.
Like, I can walk up to a person on the street and be like, hey, you know about Final Fantasy? And chances are they'll go, yeah, I've heard of that at the very least. And that's like such a win for people that have grown up in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then it feels deceptive because our sliver is gargantuan compared to how big it used to be.
Right.
But the mainstream market is It's insane how big it is. And even
yeah.
that is dwarfed by the mobile market.
Yeah.
Dwarfed. Saturn also puts in some extra tidbits from this Square Enix thing. Dragon Quest series has sold 88 million units over its history, which is a lot less than Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, and that's also a longer history than Final Fantasy, which is also depressing.
Yes. And also, Square Enix president Kiryu chose Bianca in Dragon Quest V.
This was a shareholder meeting,
so we don't have to riot, I guess.
Right?
What was
It's a shareholder meeting. He did take questions from shareholders, and so naturally, one of the shareholders in Square Enix asked the president which waifu he chose in Dragon Quest V. And the answer was Bianca.
I don't normally get in on jokes like this, but if you didn't choose Bianca, then fuck you.
Yeah, you're a heartless bastard.
What a horrible person,
right? She was the objectively correct choice. The game set you up to know that. If you still chose incorrectly, that's on you.
Baldur's Gate 3 leaps up the Steam charts after bear sex reveal. There is a plot line involving some type of sexual thrall situation with a druid that turns into bear shape, and it made it jump up the Steam charts. So that's
the Steam charts.
The Steam charts. So cool, I guess.
Bear sex and steaming shots.
It's weird. It's weird what
is weird.
Things jump up the Steam charts. LRG holds their own event called LRG 3. That's stupid. They announced localizations of the original SNES Clock Tower for Switch, which is cool.
That's really neat.
Remaster of Tomba for PS4, PS5, PC, and Switch. No word on Tomba 2? Is it just Tomba 1 right now?
I think it's just the first one for now, but they implied that it will eventually be all of them, maybe?
Physical release of Castlevania Advance on PS4, PS5, and Switch. Tiger Heli Toa Plan Collection for PS4 and Switch, which I'm down for that. All right. Konami/Nickelodeon licensed TMNT game soundtrack, vinyls, CDs, and cassettes.
For all of the Konami TMNT games, too.
Oh, I thought this was just for the new one.
No, for all of the Konami TMNT games.
Oh, yeah, because Konami didn't do the new one.
Right.
Was,
so it's,
what you call them?
All the 8-bit and 16-bit and arcade games are all getting soundtrack issues.
Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 Switch port?
Yeah, for some reason.
Not a game I want to manipulate with my Switch controls, if I'm being honest. Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore, a new game inspired by the CDI Zelda games.
And it is programmed by a guy who ported them to PC. It has art from the original artist of those games. And it features the voice work of the original voice actors for Zelda and Link from those games.
Okay. That makes about as much sense as a reissue of Plumbers Don't Wear Neckties for all platforms.
Which they also are doing.
Okay. A point-and-click called Colossal Cave, based on the 1976 Colossal Cave Adventure. That's a neat thing, I guess.
A neat throwback.
And finally, the best news, Gex Trilogy released for all platforms.
I'm for it. I am surprised that this one on their announcement card had a Square Enix copyright. I would have assumed that this would have gone to Crystal Dynamics along with the rest of the IDOS library.
Yeah.
But apparently Square Enix kept Gex. This was one they were excited about.
I like to imagine that they were like, no, we don't want Gex. Please take it out of the deal.
No, you keep this.
Sting announced an upcoming remaster of the GBA game Riviera the Promised Land. I don't know why Sting was announcing this.
Well, he had a break in his tour.
Is that what it is?
No, it's a Japanese company called Sting, who was
run by Sting.
Yeah,
That's
run
why
by
he
Sting.
named it.
Right, yeah. Naturally.
And finally, Blaze Entertainment is releasing Taito and Capcom themed handhelds that can play Evercade cartridges.
Yeah. And I believe they come with a cartridge of the respective company.
Yeah, I have an Evercade and played it a couple times and was like, that's
Did
neat.
You?
Yeah, I got one.
Nice.
Yes, I did. I got it for Christmas last year.
Neat.
And it was really weird because the person that got it for me for Christmas didn't receive the package because of the theft of the Evercades that had occurred around Christmas time.
Yeah.
and they got it in the middle of January and showed up at my house, and we're like, "Here, this is for you." It wasn't wrapped or anything. It was just very weird.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I have one. It's neat.
Nice.
It lacks lots of emulator functions, so I don't play it because I like those.
Because we're spoiled by modern technology.
Yeah. Which brings us to our topic at hand, which is
Modern technology.
Quake 3 Arena.
Yes.
It's all the Quake without all of that messy storyline, all those dumb campaigns that you don't want to play, right, Saturn?
Yeah.
All those stupid stories. Get that story the fuck out of here. Nobody gives a shit. This was developed by id Software, published by Activision, released Windows 95, 98, and NT3 on December 2nd, 1999.
Hold
Came
on.
out... What?
NT3 in
What?
1999. They were still supporting Windows NT 3.5
Look,
in
man.
1999.
They got a long tail on that 90s
Right?
software, right?
Damn.
Came out, there's a Linux port, December 10th, 1999, and then Mac got it last, January 6th, 2000.
Mhm.
It was later ported to Dreamcast, PS2, and Xbox 360 via I think it was an arcade title, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was
it was an
Xbox 360 arcade.
yeah.
Yeah. As far as first encounters, my brother picked up Quake 3 so that he could play a Dragon Ball Z mod that he was working on models for in some kind of internet group. Like, he's in these forums, and I looked it up because I just Googled Quake 3 Dragon Ball Z, and it was called Bid for Power. And I remember it. It was like a full-blown, like, conversion mod where you would play as these Dragon Ball Z characters and do Dragon Ball Z attacks, and it was really cool. And he was working in... I don't remember the software. It was some 3D modeling software from the early 2000s,
Right.
some Blender equivalent, right?
Right.
And he was working on models for these people in these forums. And I remember my mom got excited because the project got a cease and desist. And she was just like, like, she wasn't excited that it got a cease and desist, but she was excited that, like, they were doing something notable enough that a company actually cared, like that was a cool thing to her. She was like, he was actually working on these models and stuff, and they cared enough. Now, I don't know what models he didn't work on.
Right.
I don't know if any of his stuff, because you can still download Bid for Power, it's version 1.2.
Nice.
I have no idea. For all I don't even know if they used his stuff at all. I don't know if he was on a team or anything. Probably should have texted my brother and fucking asked him in retrospect. But yeah, it was Bid for Power, and he had bought Quake 3, and I was like mainlining MechWarrior, I think 4 would have been 4 at the time, and it would have been like
4
2000.
was a couple years after Quake 3.
Well, we got it late. It would have been like
years.
2002 or 2003 is when I'm playing
That
when
might be
he bought
MechWarrior
Quake
4
3.
time. Yeah.
And so I'm mainlining whatever the newest MechWarrior is.
Yeah, that's right around the time MechWarrior 4 would have come out.
And he has it sitting on the shelf, and I eventually, it's installed, so eventually I played it, and I was like, this is really great, and ended up playing a lot of it. And then years later, I became a Linux person. It became a essential part of my identity.
And it's one of the 3 Linux games.
It is. The Quake 3 was a big deal to Linux people. Like,
Right.
if you're doing Linux, they're like, oh yeah, you play UTO-4 and Quake 3? And you're like, well, of course I do. I have Linux. So, I mean, come on. And for people that are getting into Linux gaming now, thanks to Proton and stuff, this was before games ran on Linux.
Right, yeah.
Fucking nothing ran on Linux. It was
I've got
like
a copy of SimCity 3000 for Linux.
It was like, oh, you're on Linux. Which of the 5 Linux games do you play? And the answer is all of them, because you're starved for games.
Yes.
So yeah, I have a relatively storied history with Quake 3, and then of course whenever I hit high school, which was like 2004 to 2007 ish, it was still very much like one of the competitive shooters at the time. So we played a lot of it in high school because I was big in the computer classes and labs and stuff like that. So there was a lot of Quake 3 going around in my lifetime.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you, Saturn?
I had gotten a burnt copy at a LAN party. That's how life worked in the early
The traditional
2000s.
way to receive a game in the aughts.
Yeah, right. No, we had one of the computer classes that I was in was a web design class, and this would have been in like 99 or 2000. So
Yeah.
In this class, we had plenty of downtime because our final project was supposed to be to design the school's website, right? We did that the first week because
Yep,
we all
as you
knew
do.
we all knew how to design websites, and the teacher was like, I don't know how you guys did that, but open up Netscape Composer. And we're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're done. We finished the website. Here you go. And then we had all this downtime, and one of the guys was like, well, do you want to play Quake instead? So we installed Quake 1 on all of the school computers there, and we played a shitload of the Team Fortress mod for Quake.
Yep.
And that group of people, after we got in trouble and couldn't have it on the computers anymore, we would occasionally meet up for LAN parties, and we would just, lug our big, 17-inch computer monitor and our giant ass mid ATX
Your back
tower.
seat was like one side was the tower and the other side was your monitor.
Right. And then also you'd have to bring in a keyboard and a mouse and
that was
all
your
that
front
stuff.
seat.
And if you're really fancy, you'd bring speakers. But if you did bring speakers, everyone would call you an asshole because then they could only hear your game and not their game. And then, you would try to find somebody who had a house that had a big enough table to fit more than 4 computers on it, or hopefully have multiple tables. And then also somebody would have to have a network hub because this was before everybody had Wi-Fi in their homes. Not everybody had a router laying around, so you had to have something to make all these computers talk to each other. And then, we would all plug in and play whatever was available. And one of the times I went to my friend Pat's house, and somebody was like, no, we're playing Quake 3 today. And I was like, I haven't even played Quake 2 yet. And they're like, but
What if I
Quake
don't
3?
understand the story?
Right. So I was like, well, I don't have Quake 3. And he was like, that's all right. I burnt copies for everyone. And I was like, did you legally buy this? And he was like, I burnt copies for everyone.
Of course, yeah.
And then we all played some Quake 3, and I had my copy, so I went home and kept playing it. And when I got home, I was like, I'm going to check out the story mode now. And
And there you are.
Yeah, and then I was done immediately with the story, like instantly. I finished.
It is one of my great sadnesses in life that I was just a few years too young to really get to enjoy or ever go to a LAN party.
Oh, yeah.
I was invited to one in like 2009, and it was great. I had so much fun, and I've just always been sad that it was not a thing I ever got to experience.
I will say that it's weird that LAN culture ended when it did because, one, monitors became more compact.
Yeah, it seems like finally when it was convenient to do it, everyone was like, yeah, let's not.
I mean, all the things were more convenient. Laptops became more viable for gaming. Everybody had routers in their homes all of a sudden. Like, all the things coalesced to make LAN gaming so much easier. And everybody's like, nah, let's just do it over the internet.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Makes me
sad.
Let's talk development.
Okay.
This game was accidentally leaked by ATI in March 1999. And at the time, it showed a chainsaw and a grappling hook that ended up being cut from the final product. So we almost got chainsaws and grappling hooks, which I think would have made for a better game.
Right. It would have been a much more interesting game to just grapple
opinion.
around. I will say that back then, it felt like it was much more common that games got casually leaked like this.
Yeah, it was leaked at, I want to say it was leaked at an Apple event, or there was some subsequent leak.
It was
that
an Apple event.
Was it? But it's funny because it was ported to Mac last, but the game was leaked at an Apple event.
It was only a few weeks after the PC release that it came out on Mac, like a month or so.
Yeah, I guess. Still, it's the third port. It's the last port.
True. Yeah.
Well, except for the consoles later.
Right.
This used the Quake 3 engine, which was renamed to id Tech 3.
Yep.
And I also see a lot of Quake stuff, which we're going to talk about kind of later in the episode. A lot of things will just be like, yeah, it uses the Quake engine, and they really mean id Tech 3.
Right.
I've seen a few different projects that are like, yeah, this uses the Quake engine, and you're like, yeah, but this is the Quake 3 engine. Like, I can tell that it's the Quake 3 engine, not just the Quake engine.
It was weird at the time because a lot of games would have like a big sticker on the front of the box that said powered by Quake 3. And it would be games that you do not associate with Quake or the whole LAN scene, like Star Trek Elite Forces had a big sticker on the front that was like built with Quake 3, and I was like, that's I don't
But
think
why? Why did you do that?
Right? But it's a fun game though.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, in development, they chose to cut out the campaign entirely. They decided that players don't really play the story mode very much, and thus, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and I gotta say, as much as I'm normally a big fan of story and campaigns in games, I think it makes sense, because when you're playing something like Quake or UT or something, you're playing it with friends, or you're training to play with friends, or you're wanting to play that multiplayer style.
Yeah.
And if you really want a campaign mode, Half-Life just came out like a year before this.
There you go.
There you go. Go play Half-Life.
Also, in one of the weirder intersections of my hobbies, Janelle Jacquez is credited as a designer on this and Quake 2. And for people not in the know,
I have no idea who that is.
Janelle Jacquez, previously credited as Paul Jacquez, is one of them. She's one of the most legendary tabletop game designers to live. One of her most famous works was called The Caverns of Thracia, which she did for the Judges Guild. She did a bunch of Judges Guild stuff, to the point that there is a term used when constructing dungeons for fantasy RPGs, and the term is called Jacqueing the dungeon, and people use it in a verb form. And what they mean is to create a dungeon with main thoroughfares and multiple entrances and exits that are not fully linear. So her design work has been so instrumental in the tabletop gaming space that her name is invoked in verb form. And it was really fascinating for me to see her credited on Quake 3. And I was like, what? This has to be a goof. But apparently she did a bunch of video games. She worked on one of the Age of Empires, Quake 2 and 3, and then something else that I've forgotten. And is still active. She was at a convention I was at last month, still doing stuff and still hanging out and still being awesome. So I just want to put it out there. It was just weird. So.
I was going to ask, because you'd mentioned that she was one of the most notable tabletop designers to ever live. Can you define for me some of the most notable tabletop designers who never lived?
Oh, yes. All those ones that didn't were alive themselves, obviously. So. Let's talk presentation.
Yeah.
The presentation here is weird. In comparison to Quake 1 and 2, Quake 3 feels very almost
gamey.
like American Gladiators-y in space. It has a very because Quake 1 and 2 were very somber and dark and gritty. Even compared to Doom was always kind of gross and dark, but in this wacky neon sign kind of way.
Right.
If Doom is a neon sign of someone getting shot with a shotgun in the face, then Quake is the grunge rock alternative, is what it feels like.
Quake's presentation, or Quake 3's presentation, always kind of felt like Quake meets The Running Man to me.
Yeah,
it's much more gamified.
It feels very
the same gameplay concepts.
It's just it's American Gladiators in space. That's it. That's what it's always felt like to me. And I remember because this was my first Quake, and going back to the other first two Quake games, and even subsequent Quake games like Quake 4 and Quake Wars, I was like, why are these so fucking dark and grungy? Ugh. Quake 3 is it's like an American flag splattered in blood. I can't, and then this shit is just sad.
Yeah.
So it's very different presentation to really the rest of the Quake franchise. I guess Quake Champions and Quake Live, when it was around, kind of funneled a little bit of that.
And you can make it even more goofy if you go into the settings and put on the simple texture packs for weapons and item pickups. Yeah. Then it looks like it's a game show.
Yeah, it does. The game feels very game showy in the first place.
Right.
Did Quake 1 and 2 have the announcer?
No, not that I remember.
I don't remember the announcer. I
don't think the tech was there yet for
the
good quality announcer.
Is what makes Quake 3 feel really goofy.
Yeah.
For me.
Not as goofy as Unreal Tournament, which I do have to occasionally mention Unreal Tournament throughout this episode.
Please
just to fuel the fires. That's a law.
Saturn, tell us about the story in Quake 3, please.
Yeah, the greatest warriors of all time fight for the amusement of a race called the Vadrigar in the Arena Eternal. The end.
Okay, great. And who are the bad guys in the story? Or
No, that's it.
Oh, that's the whole thing.
That's the story.
I gotta tell you, it's refreshing to hear a video game story that I can pay attention through the whole thing. Finally, do we ever see the Vadrigar? Who the fuck are the Vadrigar?
I don't know.
Right,
maybe it's one weird. Of the texture packs that you can put on your dude.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Then let's talk gameplay for Quake 3 Arena.
You shoot things. They go boom.
The single player option is basically a series of increasingly difficult single player bot matches.
Right.
And that is how I primarily played the game for years.
Yeah, me too.
Because I was not good enough to go play on the internet.
Yeah, I never played on the internet. I only played with people at LANs and that single player mode. That's it.
And Quake 3 is not only kind of in line, but also indicative of this early 2000s, late 90s era of online shooters. It's very in lockstep with what kind of, in a lot of ways, what Unreal Tournament is offering. Mm-hmm. It was super fast. It was super frantic. It relied very heavily on high reflex environments. This is one of those games where you see people play it and their mouse sensitivity is so high that when they barely move, they like fucking spin a 180, That's this style of game. This I hesitate because the term really crops up later, but really the progenitor of the kind of esports sort of games, right?
And we do have to mention that the competition between this and Unreal Tournament were not only fierce in the sales arena, but it was fierce in the fan arena. The people picked sides, and they were very defensive of them.
Rocket jumping, which had originated and existed in Quake games before Quake 3, was really kind of solidified as a technique, a competitive technique, and also used by bots in this iteration of Quake 3, which is notable.
This is when it really became codified as more than just a glitch.
There are also, and this was always the difference for me between Quake and Unreal, was there are no alternate fire modes.
Right.
And Unreal, their big thing is alternate fire modes.
Right.
Guns have two different fire modes, and that always made Quake 3 feel more antiquated to me compared to Unreal Tournament. And of course, later Unreal Tournament games would also offer things like vehicles and much larger arenas and maps. So Quake 3 to me was always the kind of the more pure experience, right? It's like if Final Destination No Items was an FPS game. You know what I mean? Like, it is as pure as it gets. It's like, here's machine guns and rockets, and literally that's it. There's not even a scope for the fucking sniper rifle or
and
the railgun.
Everyone has to play as Fox.
There are no differences between the characters. There are no alternate fire modes. There are no vehicles. It's jumping and rockets, and that's it.
Let's not say no differences, because you can choose that default skin that's just the eyeball dude.
That's true.
Which you should.
I always pick the really dumb guy in the do-rag and the sunglasses goggles, or the skeleton. There's a skeleton.
The skeleton's pretty good too. Yeah.
Let's talk weapons. You have the gauntlet, which is your melee weapon. You start every match with a machine gun, which in Team Deathmatch is the only weapon that notably has lower damage output. It does less damage in Team Deathmatch. You have the shotgun, which has a laser sight on it for some reason.
Like most shotguns.
I don't know who's putting laser sights on double-barreled shotguns, but okay.
Very sophisticated farmers.
You have the lightning gun, which is effectively like a sustained beam of energy. You have the railgun, which is the kind of the sniper rifle of Quake 3. But again, there are no scopes. There's a zoom function,
right?
But there is no scope in the game.
Right.
There is the plasma gun, which is just basically a machine gun that shoots high-power, high-velocity plasma rounds.
Yep.
And then you have the rocket launcher, which is kind of very much became
signature,
the poster child for Quake 3. And obviously, rocket launchers existed in Quake before Quake 3. Right. But the Quake 3 rocket launcher is so iconic. It's so iconic that my mom went to a I think she went. It was some security conference. Like she went to like fucking DEF CON or something.
Damn.
My mom has no goddamn idea what any of this is. She had gone for her work. She worked as a receptionist at a carpet cleaning company.
Okay.
And she also had to do their IT stuff because, it's a small business. It's how small businesses are. But their IT stuff is like, hey, can you install Office on that computer?
Right.
Hey, can you call and set up internet for this site that we have or whatever? That was it. But they had some initiative where they're like, hey, we want to send you to kind of these IT conferences, for fun so that you enjoy it, but also so that you can kind of learn some IT stuff to help you with your job. And my mom's like, oh, yeah, what a great career opportunity. Cool. Because my mom didn't go to college. She's got a high school education, and she's going to take any career opportunity she can get, right?
Right.
So she goes to some fucking like hacker conference, and while she's there, she picks me up a poster. And I wish to God I still had this poster. God, I wish I had it on my wall for years. I didn't know what Linux was. This is before my Linux days. By the time I was using Linux, this poster was gone. But it was Tux, the Linux penguin.
Yeah.
And it was a big poster, like one of those like 4 foot by 3 foot posters, big one.
Yeah.
On a totally white background, holding the Quake 3 rocket launcher, wearing a helmet. And above it, it said, "Born to Frag." And I had this on my wall. I was a kid. I mean, I'm like 11 years old with "Born to Frag" on my wall. No fucking idea what a frag is. No fucking idea who this penguin is. No fucking clue what this rocket launcher is. But hey, it's cool. And I had it for, God, I wish I still had it. Oh, man, I wish I still had it so bad. So badly, I wish I still had it. Oh, yes, you found it. That's the image. That is the image. And his head says Linux rocks, and it says Penguin Computing. Oh, God, I want that on a poster again. Anyway.
That image is on Wikimedia Commons, by the way.
Awesome. So, that's how iconic the Quake 3 rocket launcher is. Like that, it is the Quake 3 rocket launcher in that poster. You also have the BFG 10K, which is not in every map. It is basically like a really good version of the rocket launcher. It's not like the BFG from Doom. It's very different. But it's pretty beefy. As far as game modes, you have free-for-all.
Grenade launcher.
The grenade launcher. I skipped that one, which is one of my favorites. Yeah. Grenade launcher is awesome. I just pick it up and I just fire random grenades and hope I kill people randomly with it. But that's because you can't aim the fucking thing.
No.
As far as game modes, there is free for all and team deathmatch. There's tournament mode, which is 1 versus 1 rounds with everybody else spectating, and then there's classic capture the flag.
Right.
Quake 3 also offers what it calls medals. I never knew these were called medals, but during the game, whenever
the little
little emblems. As you perform these feats, it will pop up and give you like this little emblem on your kill. And in single player mode, it actually keeps a record of all the medals you earn. And so that's kind of the incentive to keep playing single player mode, is I guess to rack up medals, kind of a high score sort of thing. There's excellent, which is when you score 2 frags in 2 seconds. Impressive, which is 2 consecutive railgun kills. And then gauntlet, which is any gauntlet kill. And then there are some single player only medals, which are frags, which you get 1 for every 100 frags. Perfect, which means you didn't die in a match. And accuracy, which is accuracy of 50% or higher.
I never got that one.
No, I didn't either. So there is a little bit of incentive to keep playing single player mode to rack up medals, I guess.
Yeah.
It's as much incentive as most arcade games have. But it's something,
Yeah, I kind of dropped this one single player once I got, I think it was UTO 3, had a little more robust of a single player mode. And that's when I stopped with this one.
There are also cheats and the console, which are pretty important in a game like this. It has expansive console cheats. You can open maps in developer mode. You can change stuff on the fly in the console as you're playing the game. But then I learned this, and I never knew this, and I don't know if it was advertised in the manual and I just missed it or what. But apparently, within the game's installation are config files that load up special sets of console commands that are built to teach players the game in kind of a gentler environment by tilting the game in the player's favor. So what you can do is you open the console and you type exec and then tab to autocomplete, and it shows you all these different config files that you can load up. And it's basically just different variations. Now, I can't find a description of any of these config files. And some of them are like people's names. It's like Bill's config, presumably, I'm guessing people that worked there, so that you could load up these series of console commands that kind of change the game in subtle ways.
I prefer to think they're named after nobody. It's just like some guy they met on an elevator. Like, hey, what's your name? Ted. That's going to be Ted's.
What's your preferred Quake 3 config? But it was interesting that it was in there, and it's something to kind of onboard you from bot matches to online matches. Is kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah.
There is the expansion, Quake 3 Team Arena.
Yeah.
Which came out in 2000. It added new team game modes. It added 3 new weapons: the chain gun, the nail gun, and the prox launcher.
Yeah. And people were angry about this one.
Yeah. To be fair, Team Arena is not really essential. Quake 3, very few Quake 3 people I know are like, yeah, let's play Team Arena. Like, it's...
Well, these days it just comes with it because they only sell Quake 3 Gold now, which is both of them. But at the time, I remember people being a little upset about it because it was $30. And this was when games were still $50 for the main game and $30 for each expansion. Right. And it was $30, and it was all stuff that people had pretty much already done in fan mods.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really, people balked at the price. And I remember a lot of people at the time blamed Activision rather than id for it. And it very well may have been Activision. In retrospect, that seems even more likely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember there was some people up in arms about it.
Yeah. And then there were the ports.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the ports.
Yeah.
Because I hate them. The Dreamcast port came out, and it has some of the weirdest, most confusing controls I've ever seen in FPS, presumably due to the lack of a second analog stick, because there's only one analog stick on Dreamcast.
Did you try just plugging in the keyboard and mouse?
No, Saturn, because if I'm going to do that, I'll go play it on my computer.
Because let me tell you, I have a Dreamcast keyboard and mouse, and they work perfectly in this game.
Yeah. No, I don't want to go spend $9,000 on a Dreamcast keyboard and mouse. So I'm just, there are still Dreamcast servers up and running for this version of the game, though.
Yep.
Like, it's still played by people.
Yeah, and it also had, this one had crossplay. So you could play with PC players. And if you had a keyboard and mouse on your Dreamcast, which were dirt cheap at the time, you could
actually compete.
Yeah, and because a Dreamcast was so much cheaper than a reasonable gaming PC, and this game did kind of push the edges of specs when it came out, it was a much cheaper way to get into Quake 3 and be able to play it against those people who did have those high-end gaming PCs.
Yeah, most definitely. My aspersions aside, it was a celebrated port. It was critically well received. People seemed to really enjoy it. It was all, by all accounts, a good version of the game.
Yeah.
There was also the PS2 port, which
exists.
So, also they had a new soundtrack in the Dreamcast port, which is because we didn't talk about the soundtrack. It's very atmospheric. You would really kind of not even notice it.
Which is a shame after Quake 1 had, that Trent Reznor soundtrack. Yeah. It was very iconic. And Quake 3 soundtrack is relatively, there.
Oh, they tried to make up for it. It's hardcore butt rock in the Dreamcast version. Like, you get into a game and it's like, and you're like, what is happening? It's jarring. The PS2 port, famously, for a game that has no single player, does not feature network play.
Well, the network adapter hadn't even come out yet for the PS2.
I know. So why the fuck would you port a multiplayer only online first shooter to the system?
Let's not forget, this is the same era when Halo 1 came out, and it also didn't support online.
Right,
and
but Halo 1 had a
Halo
campaign,
1.
Saturn.
True.
It had a extremely robust, a celebrated campaign.
True, but people played a shitload of 4-player split-screen Halo.
Sure.
What they didn't play a ton of was 4-player split-screen Quake 3 on PS2.
Because it did support split-screen. Yeah. It supports 16:9 widescreen. It has new maps and weapons and items. And if you have some special hardware, it'll support up to 1080i resolution too.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of the very few games that will. What it doesn't support is keyboards and mice. Which, how are you going to plug a keyboard and mouse onto a PS2 anyway? Oh yeah, it has USB ports.
I booted it up and I was like, all right, twin stick, regular FPS control Quake. Oh, no. No, sir. It is not regular FPS controls.
No, this
and I
was
turned
before
it off.
that was standard.
Yeah, so it controls like ass. It has no online. It's not, by all accounts, a fantastic version of the game, but it is Quake 3. If you want to play Quake 3 against bots and you only have a PlayStation 2, then you can technically do
Quake
that.
3.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
There was the Xbox 360 port, which was just Quake 3 again. It did have some higher scale textures, I believe. Like it looked a little bit nicer, was kind of touched up a little bit, but was, other than that, largely the same game.
And it is also backwards compatible on modern Xbox.
And there was also Quake Live, which was a free-to-play online version of the game. Came out in 2010 and lasted a few years before it was shuttered.
Yeah.
And I think Quake Live was right on the tail of Quake Wars.
I believe so, yeah. It was
which is just a weird era for Quake in general.
Right.
It was Quake 4 happened, and then Quake Live, and then Quake Wars, and then Quake Live. It's just strange. Quake is still in a weird spot. I don't know what the fuck's going on with Quake.
Yeah.
Let's talk reception for Quake 3. Because people liked it.
Oh, yeah.
It scored very highly. I do want to point out just how the market has changed. There were notably few criticisms of the complete absence of any real form of single-player content outside of the bot matches.
Yeah.
Which seems like it wouldn't fly today.
No, not at all. But at the time that this released, people knew that people going to a first-person shooter were going predominantly to play multiplayer with friends.
Yeah.
That was the purpose of it. Deathmatch was so huge at the time that they just assumed that's what you wanted to do if you were playing a first-person shooter. So it was fine. It was perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would say that Halo kind of saved the first-person campaign. Halo and Half-Life saved the campaign mode.
I do feel like part of it is just because one of Quake 3's greatest successes are its netcode.
Mm-hmm.
It was not only an online experience, but it was a good one.
Yeah.
And in 1999, you were not always guaranteed a good online experience.
Because most people are still on dial-up.
Yes, especially for fast-paced online games. And I feel like the fact that Quake 3 worked well, I mean, for the most part, within reason, right? But the fact that it had really good netcode and was pretty smooth was a big deal.
Even on a Dreamcast modem, it was pretty smooth.
And so I think that kind of was such a wow factor at the time that people were willing to dismiss the fact that, like, well, there's literally no single player game here. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I do want to point that out, that it's not something that I think we would think about today.
Right.
But pre-Quake 3 and pre-Unreal Tournament, like, the chances of you having not only good enough internet, but also a game with good enough net code to support a really solid, good online experience was still kind of a rarity, you know?
Especially when you're looking at online net code. Because prior to that, you had your LAN play, which also requires some net code, but you didn't have to worry about latency as much. Mm-hmm. And Quake 3 felt like the first one that really factored that latency in mind.
Absolutely. As far as legacy, Quake 3 Gold, which you already mentioned, came out in 2001. It was a compilation of Quake 3 and Team Arena in one box.
It finally justified the price of Team Arena.
Yep. Right after release, Quake 3 had a pretty sizable kind of esports. It wasn't called esports at the time, but an esports scene popped up around it.
Yep.
Several competitive mods were created and used for various competitions. Some of them you can still find because there were different types of competitions, right? There was like, all right, this is our vanilla Quake competition, and this is our competitive such and such version of Quake that we play. And so it really did grow into a genuine competitive scene. And it was a pretty big one for a little while there. There was a sequel, obviously. Quake 4 released to much less fanfare in 2005.
Be honest, I constantly forget Quake 4 exists.
I feel like I'm the only fucking person that liked Quake 4.
You're the one.
It was developed by Raven Software, published by Activision. It's not an id game. It feels different, but it's fun. I also like Unreal 3. They're fun games.
Yeah.
Quake Champions released in 2022. It's still running today. It does still have some of that kind of, again, like American Gladiators in space DNA that Quake 3 introduced.
Right.
Because Quake 4 went right back to like grungy,
Yeah, it feels like a sequel to Quake 2 and not a sequel to Quake 3.
It feels like it ignores that Quake 3 happened.
Yeah.
The game still has a robust community of players and modders. I'm going to mention some Linux stuff because I don't get a lot of opportunity to talk about Linux.
What?
Nexius is a free and open source first-person shooter game that was built on the Quake engine, released under GPL in 2005, and it was a big thing in the Linux crowd for a while. Yeah. And then the game got a commercial release by THQ, built on CryEngine 3, and everyone abandoned it because they were like, "Fuck you, you were FOSS software, and then you fucking abandoned us." But Nexius was a thing for a little while. Open Arena, which I played a ton of, is a straight clone of Quake 3, released under the GPL in 2005, and it was a very popular Linux kind of go-to FPS game at the time. A lot of people played Open Arena in like the aughts, the later aughts.
Yeah.
And I played my fair share of it. If I remember right, there were some Linux distros that came with Open Arena installed.
I believe that.
There are very notable mods. There's Gundam Universe and Bid for Power, which are total conversion mods that turn it into a Gundam or a Dragon Ball Z game, respectively. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of like military shooter mods, as you would expect by any, first-person shooter engine. There's tons of quality and of life and improvement mods and graphics mods. There's one called Superheroes Arena that's just DC superheroes in Quake blasting each other. And then probably the version people are most familiar with today is IO Quake 3, which is a free open source rebuild of the Quake 3 engine that is not only compatible with the original version of the game, but it lets you play with people still playing the original version of Quake. It's when we were playing for the show, we were running a Quake server right now. Yeah. In fact, it's running on my second monitor. I should probably stop it at some point. People, it was IO Quake, but people could join with any version of Quake. You just drop your Quake 3 files in and go. And it puts the game in proper resolution. There's a high-res texture pack for it. It really is kind of the best way to play Quake on PC these days.
And I will say, I jumped into that server with the Game Pass version of Quake 3.
Yep, which is still fully compatible.
Let me take a moment to discuss the Game Pass version of Quake 3.
Please do, because we didn't mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is available on Game Pass since it is Bethesda, and Bethesda is owned by Microsoft. And when I first launched it on my Windows 11 PC that was built in 2022 and has a 4K monitor, it launched in 640 by 480. And it took me some minutes to convince it that it should display at all.
Yeah.
But I did have to manually edit the config file in order for it to play widescreen. Yeah. But once I did,
1024 by 768 is the highest it natively supports.
Exactly. But once you manually edit the config file, which there's instructions for all over the internet, it runs fine. It runs in 4K. It looks great.
Also, IO Quake is compatible with the Game Pass Windows Store version. You can make it work. I was on their website just to check. So even if you're playing the Game Pass version on PC, you can still boot those files through IO Quake. It still works.
Nice. Very nice.
But yeah, it's especially on the back of you complaining about Final Fantasy XIV not being compatible with its fucking self.
Right.
To get to the end of this and say, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Even if you can play. A guy playing Quake 3 on a Dreamcast can play with a guy playing on Game Pass and a guy on his Xbox and me on IO Quake on my PC, all on a dedicated server right now today, and it just fucking works.
I don't know if the Xbox version plays with the other ones. I think it
does. Is it separate?
I thought it was closed to Xbox Live.
Oh, maybe. I was thinking the current Xbox, because there's two Xbox versions. There's the Xbox Live Arcade version, but isn't there a newer version?
No.
Oh, my mistake then.
There's only the old Xbox Live Arcade version, which I don't think is available for sale anymore. I think you had to have had it, and it's backwards compatible. But the only one they offer now on Game Pass is the PC version.
Regardless, an extremely compatible game.
Yeah.
Quake 3 doesn't really give a shit how you're getting into Quake 3. It's going to let you play Quake 3 with everybody else. It's going to do its best to allow you to play Quake 3 with as many people as you want. And if you load up Quake 3 now, today, then there are tons of servers still active.
Yeah,
right
bizarre
now.
amount.
Tons of people still playing Quake 3. Now, granted, a lot of it is that one shitty map that I hate where you're bouncing all over space and it's rockets only. I hate that map.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
We call that the Quake 3 map.
And we didn't even really touch on it, but Quake 3 is fucking fun. It's not as robust an experience as your Unreal tournaments, but it's just fun.
It's simple, pure
quick,
fun.
It's simple. Yeah. It's a blast.
Yeah.
And this is kind of getting into final thoughts, I guess, but Quake 3 is still a fun game in 2023. It's not very complex.
It feels like the distilled late 90s FPS experience.
It does. It does. And a lot of that boils down to the fact that it's just so fucking compatible.
Yeah.
That I can, like, when we played, because we played Quake 3 before with the Discord server.
Yeah.
And I just installed it off my disc, the same version from when I was a kid, and just fucking played online with everybody. You know, it was fine.
Yeah.
In that same CD key, I still put it in when I play in IO Quake, and it works with my Steam version. I just took my Steam CD key, put it into IO Quake, and it was like, okay, sure.
It's nice that the Game Pass version finally didn't ask me for a CD key. I got so sick of entering that same totally legit CD key from that burned copy from 25 years ago almost.
It's so accessible. It's so fun. We had a really good time playing. We were all in voice chat. I think we got 5 or 6 people playing Quake all at once, and then Andrew was also there, not playing but just listening to us shout at each other. And there were we had people playing on our server with like 300 ping from Australia.
Right.
You know, coming into my hillbilly internet in rural Texas.
Right.
And even with that crazy high ping, there was only 1 or 2 moments where they're like, yeah, I think something weird happened. Like, just good, solid net code. It's a
Look, if it can handle Dreamcast dial-up, it can handle your hillbilly internet.
So yeah, Quake 3 is still fun. People still play it. If anyone who has been PC gaming or did PC gaming in the aughts, if you walk up to them right now and say, hey, do you want to play Quake 3? I guarantee you they'll go, yeah, sure, okay. Like, it's anyone
4 minutes, why not?
Anyone of that era will be like, yeah, yes, totally. I will totally play. Even Saturn will play Quake 3, and he hates first-person shooters.
It's true. That's a good point.
Even I can go to Saturn and say, hey, Saturn, you want to play a round of Quake 3? And he'll be like, yeah, but only one. But he'll do it.
Yeah,
he'll still do it.
I might play 1 or 2 rounds, and then I'll be like, all right, I guess that's enough for me.
Yeah, and so it's still out there. It's still around. You know, we haven't had a chance to miss it because it never left, right? It's just been working hard.
Yeah,
since 1999.
Working hard for its money.
Working hard for its money. And if you think we work hard for our money, you can repay us at patreon.com/retrowarriors.
See how I set you up for the perfect segue there and you took it?
We work so hard for the money.
We work hard for it, honey.
You can go listen to Talking Wizards, which is a show. You can go listen to the other one we do. What's it called? After Hours? No, that's not it. Read Along. That's the show we do. We do a show. It's my own Patreon.
God.
We do a show called Read Along that I always call After Hours, despite the fact that After Hours has been canceled for the better part of a year. But you can go do those things, and you can become a patron, and then we'll thank you by your legally given name, as we're about to thank the following patrons for their kind donations. Yeah. Starting with, I'm not giving my name to a machine.
And David Cavallari.
Sean Schaller.
Video Rangers Podcast.
William Owens.
Eric G.
Leo Lobato.
George McBain.
Sharp Cheddar.
And Nick M.
Are all the fine patrons we want to thank for their very kind donations that they give to us. Their hard-earned, the money they work hard for.
Yeah, they just paid for a Quake server.
They paid, well, I mean, it was free because it's Quake, because it's a good PC game and I don't have to pay money, but, you know.
Well, they paid for your internet upkeep while you
There you go. They paid for my internet so that I could host this Quake server.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so nice of them. And we want you to be one of them, too.
See, now you ruined the segue. You had it perfect earlier. You could have just run with it, and you didn't.
No, I can't. I guess I got to be weird about it. So, at no point can I be normal, and there has to be.
It's impossible for you.
It was too smooth earlier, so I had to be like, all right, let's bring it back home.
You had to bork it up.
Yeah. It's the name of my autobiography. Justin Baker, borking it up. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. You should come play Quake with us because I have a Quake server and it's running on my second desktop and I'm just going to leave it there. So if you want to come play Quake with us or anything, then come hang out. We play, I was just playing a D&D 3rd edition game with Discord people last night and it was a good time. We play Quake and RPGs and allegedly people are putting together some kind of Blood Bowl league if you're into Blood Bowl.
And we've played Bomberman, we've played Mario Kart. If you want to play those things.
I've also learned
things I'm more likely to jump into.
I've also learned that if you're playing any Dragon Quest game and you don't like looking up guides because it's annoying, you can just ask Saturn and he knows from memory where to go at any given point in any given Dragon Quest game.
And most Final Fantasies.
Yeah, so I don't check guides anymore.
No.
I just say, "Hey Saturn, I have a today I was like, "Hey, what level do I have to be to change jobs in Dragon Quest 3?" And he was like 20. And I was like, "Great. You saved me a Google." I didn't have to Google anything. I just asked Saturn. So, that's like a game is just asking Saturn questions about JRPGs.
That's a good point.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.